The decisions in the thought process around what we are doing, I would recommend to almost no one. It's insane. Someone asked me the other day, like, oh, so what do you think of founder mode? I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, how could you not know? It's like, dude, I'm coding like 13 hours a day right now, being a time where there are no rules. I love no rules. I love that there isn't some expert. We're only hiring people with 17 years of experience with the Anthropic stack.
How attractive was it to go after that big of a market?
You have answered the question, I suppose. I mean, go big or go home. We're just trying to take a third of the enterprise software market. Just a total bank heist of, all of enterprise software.
From Mostly Media, it's Mostly Growth. Go-to-market strategist Kyle Poyar and CFO CJ Gustafson share smart takes on growing revenue and running a company. Pricing, unit economics, AI, leadership, candid insights for CEOs, CFOs, and CROs, or anyone else aspiring to climb to the C-suite. This is Mostly Growth.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. You just launched a new AI product. The new pricing page looks great. I'm talking crisp. But behind it, last-minute glued code, messy spreadsheets, and running ad hoc queries to figure out what to bill. Customers get invoices they can't understand. Engineers are chasing billing bugs. Finance can't close the books. Well, with Metronome, you hand it all off to the real-time billing infrastructure that just works. Reliable, flexible, and built to grow with you. They turn raw usage events into accurate invoices, give customers bills they actually understand, and keep every team in sync in real time. Whether you're launching usage-based pricing, managing enterprise contracts, or rolling out new AI services, Metronome does the heavy lifting so you can focus on your product, not your billing. That's why some of the fastest growing companies in the world like OpenAI and Anthropic run their billing on Metronome. Visit metronome.com to learn more. That's metronome.com. As a CFO, you're expected to bring clarity to everything, including how your company manages ownership. The tools you use should make that easier, not harder. But when they come with hidden fees, data you can't always trust, and support you can't rely on, you end up with more frustration than clarity. That's where Pulley comes in. Pulley is a cap table management platform built for finance leaders who need accurate, decision-ready data from a system that works for your business, not against it. With Pulley, you get intuitive workflows, audit-ready reporting, and support you can count on, all backed by predictable pricing you can plan around, so you can stay compliant and make smarter decisions about your company's future. Manage everything from fundraise modeling to ASC 718 reporting to custom liquidity programs, all on one trusted platform. Hundreds of high-growth companies like Linear, Fathom, and Runway trust Pulley to help turn ownership into a strategic advantage. And joining them is now easier than ever. You can switch to Pulley in as little as 5 days. And for a limited time, they're offering 25% off your first year. To claim your exclusive offer, visit pulley.com/mostlymetrics. That is PULLEY.com/mostlymetrics. Please, guys, I really need this. Pulley.com/mostlymetrics.
Welcome back to another episode of Mostly Growth. Today we're joined by Christopher O'Donnell. He's the founder and CEO of Day.ai, which is reimagining CRM for the AI age. And he's former chief product officer of HubSpot. Over time, he took the company from a single product to a multi-product company, introduced a PLG motion. He's a fellow Brown grad, like myself. He also co-founded ProfitWell with Patrick Campbell. So welcome, Christopher.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Kyle.
So we met, I think, almost 10 years ago at an OpenView PLG summit. And what I have learned since is that you've got a band called The Providers that has 11 million views on YouTube. And that blew my mind. How did you go from music to software?
PLG, I think music and software are exactly the same thing. I mean, I went to school for half computer science and half like a traditional Western music degree, like a bachelor's in music. And then I did music for a while. And then my girlfriend, I really wanted to marry. And she's like, why don't you get like a job? And so I sort of stumbled into software, but realized pretty quickly within a year or two that these were really the same job, hanging out with a group of people who bring a bunch of diverse, overlapping talents into a room and saying, okay, we got to make something that's going to be a hit. And everybody sort of has a piece of the story. Do you know what I mean? It's the drummer's got this idea, the bass player's got but then you got to get them to lock in. You got to get the front end dev and the back end dev to kind of see the world in a similar way. So, I mean, honestly, it's literally the same job. Like producing a record and producing, a feature, a piece of software is literally the same. I could do 4 hours on like specific parallels.
Was there anything that made your hit All I Know? Was there anything that made that just take off and go viral, or was that just all word of mouth?
A lot of international. We targeted Brazil. I have no ambition of being famous in America for some reason, but I would love to be famous in Brazil. I studied abroad there and I just love the country and I love the music and I really respect it. So it kind of caught on down there and took off from there.
I did get a taste of fame in Brazil once. I went to a conference that was kind of the like Dreamforce of Sao Paulo, and they had me speak in English with like Portuguese subtitles. So no one had a clue what I was saying live, but there were like thousands of people that all took Instagram videos of me and post them in stories. So I felt kind of like a rock star, but it was just really bizarre to give a keynote when no one had a clue what I was saying.
Christopher, have you ever seen the documentary Searching for Sugarman?
Yes, incredibly cool.
So for the benefit of listeners, this guy in the US comes out with this album in the 70s and he thinks he like never made it big. He never made it past like small local venues. And he finds out like 30 years later, at this time he's in the US working these day labor, hard construction jobs, that he's an absolute cult hero. I think it's in South Africa. And he has this whole other second life in his career when he's 50 or 60. It's pretty wild.
A lot of musicians that I know will play, they're playing Boston, New York, and there are, 50 people there, 100 people there. And then they go play Belgium. More traditional blues and jazz and stuff like that is still really popular in Europe. So they're little pockets, I guess.
You had a dream job in HubSpot, and you've given up the great job to be an early stage founder. Your office is in the midst of construction. You're actually doing a lot of the construction work yourself, including the wall behind you. What's been the hardest adjustment to go into early stage life?
When you're at scale, when there are hundreds of product managers, hundreds of designers and everything, in a certain sense, it's pretty clear, or at least it felt reasonably clear to me, that my job was a particular set of things: organizational design, change management, which was kind of the key skill that we focused on. I'm happy to talk about why. It's a chessboard, and how are you going to kind of play this game and work through the hearts and minds of people who are going to be doing things on a daily basis that you have no direct connection with. I'd walk by an engineer's desk and they had their code up and I'd point at a line and I'd be like, that's a really good line. But you're much less, even if you have a conceptual understanding, even if you have a reasonably detailed technical understanding of what's going on, you have hundreds, thousands of people that are making decisions on a daily basis. And so the effort and concentration of arranging them in the right way and inspiring them in the right way is, to me, absolutely fascinating. How did I do on the sort of managing up and sideways senatorial side of things? Reports vary, but I noticed that I'm still extremely, close with all of the people who are in the sort of big room for all those conversations. I have a wonderful relationship with all those people. So maybe it went okay. I'm not a big company person, but running a big team is super interesting. How do you give a talk about what you're going to do the next quarter, the next year, with the bar being, you see on whiteboards that day all around the office, slogans or an image, a matrix or a lens that you're trying to offer the team, and you start seeing that everywhere. We had times where we would do some sort of vision, some sort of change management. Hey, here's where we're going. Here's how to think about it. And teams would have t-shirts printed up. That's when people are ripping. Starting from scratch with the blank canvas, I'm all about just diving in and building a web app. I'm probably much more into that even than the big team stuff. The pay is a little different, but that's fine. God can take care of that with the fullness of time or not, whatever. I really love making things. I love being very hands-on. I love being in the details. That other mode is, sure, it's an adjustment, but it's like a total breath of fresh air. That's probably more my natural element.
You've been in a SaaS environment for a while, and now you're building more AI native product. And just kind of curious what it means to build something AI native. What was the kind of before and after like? But one of the things that within that is that you're doing it out of Boston, which is I think kind of unusual. I'm not seeing a ton of AI native companies come out of Boston right now. So I guess maybe as a starting point, why Boston, and have you felt pressure to leave?
Oh, I haven't felt any pressure to leave. That's easy. We started the company and we had friends come on a plane that day, to talk about, the financial side and how we kind of wanted to do capital strategy. So if I were not 44 years old, I would live in the Bay Area. Having some track record and history with people where there is a level of trust and the relationship, is there, you can accomplish a lot of things that you would otherwise need to be physically in San Francisco. Best way to raise money is to go work at a scale up for a decade. There hasn't been a need to explain the market or the approach or that kind of thing very much because, we've over a decade of history with the folks who are involved with this company. And I do think that's a big part of it.
Since I went out on my own, I hired a business coach. I meet with them every 2 weeks because it can be lonely when you don't have somebody to bounce ideas off of. And I think my wife was sick of me bringing them up at the kitchen table with the kids there. And one of the ideas that we were talking about last week was how much does where you live impact the trajectory of your career? And it's something that I've wrestled with because I grew up in Boston. I worked for a bunch of Boston-based companies. Yes, we did sometimes go to San Francisco, but it was a quick turn and burn. And then I built the business that I'm working on now from the attic of a condo in Naples, Florida, which is like heaven's waiting room. So I've gone back and forth because when I do go to these cities, I feel somewhat left out. You hear people in line talking about a podcast while they're getting coffee or something. But at the same time, I look at people like you, Christopher, who have had a very successful career and you don't live in San Francisco.
I'm going to get into angry uncle, get off my lawn territory here really fast. It's just a fair warning, but I don't have time to listen to podcasts. I'm not that interested in the scene. I'm not that interested in, this kind of stuff. Someone asked me the other day, oh, so what do you think of founder mode? What do you, and I'm like, dude, I've never heard of, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, how could you not know? It's like, dude, I'm coding 13 hours a day, dude. I don't know what founder, he's like, that's founder mode. So I'm like, he explains founder mode to me. I'm like, this is why I don't know what founder mode is. I don't love an echo chamber. I love being around people who are very intellectually rigorous and intellectually honest. I think those tend to be the people that are pretty easy to communicate with wherever you are. Because you get on these threads, you get on these trains of thought, and it's boom, boom, boom. So I don't feel a ton of FOMO on the kind of economy of ideas. With the AI stuff, there's a little bit of ear to the ground stuff. Now we have engineering function, and Eric Munson, our founding engineer, is in San Francisco. He's uber wired in. Also things look, Sarah Guo has invested and is extremely helpful. And so if I need to have a sense of, kind of what's going on, what to be thinking about, the cutting edge ideas, I can get that download pretty quickly from her. If I were in my 20s and I were trying to start a company or something like that, I'd be there.
Why is that?
Capital.
Just the money aspect?
Yeah, capital, community, the old thing of you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I'm learning new things every day. There's no question. I'm also a little bit who I'm going to be. The day I decide, oh my gosh, I actually need another brain to do the product thinking with me. I have this amazing opportunity. I mean, how many PM people have I been able to call a team member? So I can call Daphne and lucky enough that she comes. I mean, she's the best I've ever worked with. I think later in your career, maybe one can end up fortunate enough to be able to curate that small group through that stage. And then in terms of engineering, I do suspect that we'll grow engineering in SF significantly. And I suspect as my role changes, I'll spend more time out there too.
So you're, increasingly set in your ways, but you also have to relearn in some ways building a company in this AI first era. What have been the things you've had to relearn to build an AI native company?
That Alex Karp interview the other day, which I did watch because it got forwarded around so much. And he talks about neurodiversity and right now being a time where there are no rules and that favoring certain kind of neuro patterns. I love no rules. I love that there isn't some expert. We're only hiring people with 17 years of experience with the Anthropic stack. You know, it's like we're all brand new to it. The starting gun was June of 24, kind of, on all this stuff. The other starting gun, I guess, was, you know, a year earlier with ChatGPT. But trying to use this stuff to build a product and to deliver the functionality of the product. So you have those two layers that you have to wrap your head around. We're all kind of starting from scratch, everybody. There was some relearning, but a lot of just learning for the first time. And we set our team up for that. I wanted to be around people who were particularly the kind of people who would take to learning a brand new thing extremely quickly. Because, you know, we started the company in May 23. Nobody had even a month of experience using this stuff.
Walk me through an example, and maybe even it's like the last week or last day, building something, talking to customers, using AI yourself, building something that's AI centric. Like, what does that look like for you?
I'm on a demo with some folks on Friday and they run into a bug and we're on the call. You know, I have a whole Claude code rig. And I can just say, you know, hey, you know, invited user comes in and they see this instead of that, blah, 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 blah. And the thing's shipped, which on some level has been how I've liked to work my whole career. The fact that now so much of it can be automated is pretty astonishing. So just like iteration on product quality, the level of polish and magic that goes into a product is now, you know, a whole new thing is available. Whereas before, you know, you'd look like an idiot, like, oh, you know, before I ship this favoriting feature, I really want to, you know, make the star that you hit, I really want to make it spin. And now it's like, yes, you made the thing spin, you know, and now I'm sitting here and Eric sees that. I'm like, you see the favorite, you see the star. He's like, yeah, I saw a star. You think it should shrink a little bit when you click? He's like, I think it should shrink a little bit when you click it, bro. We're able to kind of allow mental space for some of these details in the product. That's new.
What's the most magical thing that you've built that's, you know, totally different for your users?
So we had the board meeting on Thursday and Pat and Danny were here in Boston, which is incredible for them to come by. We do memos and stuff ahead of time. And those are like rigorously imbued with voice of the customer because I have everything in the app. You guys use Claude, use ChatGPT, use Perplexity. There is this new adjustment to the way that we think about things. And it is kind of meta that it's, you know, a board meeting about the thing that's kind of running the board meeting. And the app is in many ways, like the main character of the board meeting. Anything that comes up in discussion, whether it's quantitative or anecdotal, qualitative themes. I mean, Kyle, this is so up your alley, dude. Woof. I mean, being able to pull any question just out and have examples and have video clips and have charts and have data and be able to then go, well, maybe, I don't know about this data. And then it's like, well, listen, mofo, here's all of the supporting information. Then you're like, okay, this feels like something really different. The most magical thing is like, as a parent, I'm using Claude constantly. As a homeowner trying to do home maintenance, I'm using Perplexity constantly. As somebody playing with his kids and trying to do creative things, I'm using ChatGPT constantly. My daughter, you know, doesn't buy coloring books. She's like, why would I buy a coloring book? I want to do a coloring page with me and my hamster and my guitar. And like, you know, she just makes that. Having that facility for business, including it very synthetic, very gnarly, pricing, packaging, even kind of questions is new. This is new. We are absorbing this ourselves in our own use of it. I think it's cool. It puts the customer and what customers are actually saying at the forefront of everything, which was the dream with this, but seeing it is like at this level is new.
Do you miss part of that grind? This is a weird way to word it, but I know you're a creative guy. You've had time in the trenches where shit was really hard to do. Do you feel like part of your brain atrophies in a way if you outsource a lot of these answers automatically?
Maybe the answer is this thing is giving us options, and it's giving us supporting evidence and information and saving us the grind of going and collecting that. I don't miss waiting for a user experience research team to go do a 90-day research cycle. We're doing this thing now, which is like, just tell me the biggest thing you're facing. It doesn't have to be sales, forget CRM, forget all this stuff. Like, what's the biggest question you have right now? Somebody's like, well, I'm getting pressure to maybe hire a COO. Okay, great. Open this thing up. Say, I'm getting pressure to hire a COO. How should I think about that? Is that insane? Is that obvious? Whatever. And the thing goes off and it looks at the pipeline and it looks at the to-dos that people have been doing. And, it comes back and it's like, look, this part of your sales and go-to-market is very rigorous and on the rails, but these newer people are not. And, there's a lot of variance here. And so what are you going to do about that? Standardizing this kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then over here, I notice, support tickets are increasing faster than you're doing them. It's the same thing as Claude. Claude's not going to tell me what to do in my life about the things that I ask it, but it's going to tell me a lot about how to think about it.
One thing I'm curious about, so you're in a category, well, it's maybe one of the oldest software categories out there with CRM. Users are many ways like stuck in their ways when it comes to like what a CRM should be, how they should use it, and so on. Do you need bridges to get them comfortable with something new? Like, how do you manage kind of changing the user expectations as you build a new product?
This is in many ways like the fundamental product strategy question of building one of these things. Two approaches that one could convince themselves to take. Build a more traditional CRM and then try to add in some AI magic. Here's this thing, you log in, it looks like, stuff we've been building for years and years. But, when you go to create an opportunity, it suggests some opportunities that you might want to create. Maybe you do like a little cleaner UI, or you do, because this stuff, apps, as they get older and mature, they become like the jet airplane cockpit. You know what I mean? And so you have some advantage by just starting fresh. So you come in and you're like, I'm going to do a clean CRM, and then maybe I'm going to do a little like web enrichment with some AI. I'm going to do suggested ops. So that's sort of like the bolt-on-ish, sort of like legacy plus kind of approach. Then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the whole 4-day adventure in Joshua Tree. You don't need tables, man. We're not going to, you don't need a Kanban board where we're going, dude. It's just tell it what you want, man. Okay, pretty cool. But you don't trust it. And that's kind of the problem with that. Like, we're just going to ingest everything. Just trust me, bro. And we're going to answer your questions and maybe give you a chart or something. And that's the question we get more often than, why we did what we did, is why not just be all in and just do like some vector constellation, everything, RAG, whatever. We're the synthesis of those two, where it is actually the sort of trippy, just talk to it kind of thing. And you have the record detail. You can see all of the structured data. It is all automatically populated. The tables are sick. They're infinite scroll. They're instant to load, filters, views, sorting. It's the best CRM tables ever made. Kanban board, best Kanban board ever made for CRM. And that is, the bridge from the past. I don't know if it was right. It still feels a little bit like you need to do that. You need to be able to pull the curtain back and show how the woman was not actually sawed in half. But it's pretty sweet. And I do think there's some use cases, and you get into analytics and you want to kind of wrap your head around things. Some of the visualization. Well, now I have the best of both worlds. I can talk to my assistant, and my assistant and I are both looking at a table of data. And as I talk to my assistant, the assistant can reconfigure the table and do a pivot table for me. And all of the legacy CRM stuff is snapping around into place and doing all kinds of cool shit. We did decide to build the bridge from the past.
Christopher, how attractive was it at the very start when you looked at the market you were going to go after? And Kyle was hinting at the horizontal versus vertical aspect of it. But Kyle and I were riffing on a past podcast that the largest B2B pure play SaaS company in the world is Salesforce. And then if you were to round out like the top 50, there would be a lot of other ERP-ish, CRM-ish type core systems of record that are horizontal in nature. So you can either go wide or you can go narrow. How attractive was it to go after that big of a market?
You have answered the question, I suppose. I mean, go big or go home. We're just trying to take a third of the enterprise software market.
And the headcount's been attached to it.
It's honest work, man. Just a total bank heist of, all of enterprise software. The decisions in the thought process around what we are doing, I would recommend to almost no one. It's insane. It will work. It is working. It's insane. It's a crystal ball. I think at this point, we've kind of pulled it off. It's hard to explain to people, and the world hasn't had their kind of ChatGPT moment with business software, where this expectation is natural. But that will come, just the way that cloud came. You know what I mean? I mean, there was no ServiceNow, there was no Workday juggernaut kind of thing 10 years ago even. It's like these were startups. I would recommend to somebody more like a Y Combinator model. Do a wedge, get in there, provide some value, see if you can expand, sell the company, have fun, drink pina coladas, raise a family. I don't know. That sounds great. This is just not that.
So we recently had Brian Balfour on, talked to him a lot about product market fit. He has this kind of view of PMF as a threshold, and that threshold is kind of constantly changing. In general, it increases, but then you can have moments where it increases rapidly and there's an entire kind of PMF collapse with some legacy products. I guess, how are you measuring where the PMF threshold is for you and how strong your product market fit is over time with what you're building?
I like the lens that has been offered to me by Pat and Sequoia, which is this idea that with these AI native ground up, kind of rewrites, kind of category by category, that the market is waking up and seeing that it is real and obvious. Then it just goes. And you want to be the winner, right? You want to be ready. In my opinion, you want to have really good word of mouth. I don't think there's any, marketing channel on earth that can compete with word of mouth at all. The mindset of the market is changing pretty quickly. And I think that there is a major change left to happen around something like CRM.
What was the first category to wake up?
Productivity, maybe, or software development.
I was going to say customer support, but you're probably right with the coding.
I think legal and customer support were really fast after that. Harvey and companies like that did a really nice job. The legal stuff lends itself very well to LLMs, obviously. Then, tons of help desk things coming online. Again, LLMs are going to be great. Yeah, give me a bunch of background, give me an in-feed of tickets, and I'll just do your tickets for you. I mean, that's, super straightforward. You're going to have a ton of fit there. I think it's happening in IT service management, and it just hasn't happened in CRM yet. Like I showed Sarah Guo in San Francisco, which I visit because I live in Boston. So I was visiting, and I showed her the thing. I said, here's the kind of question I can ask this thing. And her comment was, none of my CEOs would think that they could ever ask a CRM that question.
Well, that's a change of behavior, right?
And a change of expectation. If there's a thing to look for, it's the questions that we get on sales calls and demos. Those questions have changed a lot in 2 years. People are not yet showing up saying, so you can just suck in all my data from all systems. That's not the question we're getting yet. That's when this type of product will have product market fit, is when people show up and their question is not like, show me the integration page for Stripe. These things are integrated. You know what I mean? Like you just start to put the data in some same room together-ish. You set up a Zapier thing so that one thing is glancingly aware of the feed of events from the other thing, and like everything is perfect. When people start coming and asking us things that have a worldview where, of course, this is possible, then it's going to be pretty different. Until then, it's like build out, build deeper, build wider, do stuff like this and try to preach the gospel and get people excited about it and raise the expectation of what's possible, because I think people are going to like it.
I guess, where are you trying to start and manufacture some early adopter kind of interest? Because I think about CRM, it depends on the size of company and what they're adopting. But at a larger company, it's maybe the RevOps team. They maybe have a Salesforce admin. They maybe have an agency that they've hired. There's a whole ecosystem of people that are very dedicated to the status quo. On the early stage side, there's maybe a lot more appetite or openness to try something new, but not as much revenue there. You don't know which of those companies is going to succeed. They could churn off of you at some point because they feel like they need to graduate onto a more mature CRM. Like, I guess there's pros and cons of different places to start, but how are you tackling that right now?
I'm not worried about anybody using our product and getting it and graduating anywhere, which would be traditionally the worry, right? That traditionally has been the game. Start at, 1 to 5, move your way up to 5 to 10 to 10 to 25, and just march upward. I call that, selling CRM the way we were raised. In this house, we don't do design partnerships, with enterprises.
Attacking Salesforce from the bottom up, essentially.
Yeah, it's the soft underbelly. It's all that, and we're doing that, certainly. And if somebody doesn't have a CRM at all, of course, on some level, it's going to be easier to sell them a new kind of CRM. I think the answer to your question, though, really is CEOs. I do. I think that CEOs have been sidelined, woefully so, by CRM. What is the purpose of the CRM? It should be the complete record of customer information. This should be available to the CEO to make existential decisions about the company on behalf of, principally, one hopes, the customers and also the shareholders and the employees. If you go to any CEO and ask about their business problems and the stuff that they're, laying awake at night thinking about, and ask them how the CRM could help them, maybe through weeks of meetings and asking for charts and waiting and being told that they need this other thing to be installed and they need the devs to do this and it's this many story points and it'll be in this sprint, and then there needs to be a new view created, and then we see this is why we need Snowflake, somebody says, and this and that, and it's like weeks go by, and then finally the CEO sees a chart. This is status quo. I think it's a bad thing for customers. And I think that CEOs are losing control over these companies as they scale. We hear CEOs say all the time, I just wish I could clone myself. Well, why? Well, because people aren't listening on these calls the way that I want to listen. They're not looking at these things in the ops. They're not qualifying deals the right way. Well, what if you could institutionalize all of that? What if you could take the flavor and the taste that the CEO intends to be that of the company and make that the default? Everybody's meeting notes have all the stuff the CEO would look for. It's not a hard problem to solve once you're in that kind of new mindset. So I think that will be the thing, and I think that it will go up market insanely fast, the way that all the rest of this stuff has gone up market insanely fast.
So the only thing that's maybe as entrenched as old school CRMs is the seat-based pricing model, specifically for CRMs. Are you guys charging seat-based? Are you thinking about a pricing innovation? How are you approaching that?
It is seat-based, but the seat is the AI.
So AI agent seats, essentially.
AI agent seats. So at the beginning, you don't have to overthink it. It feels very much like a seat-based model. Do I need a $30 seat? Do I need a $75 seat? Oh, I'm going to be the admin. I'm going to do this stuff full-time. This is my full-time job. I'm going to need this pricier seat. Over time, maybe you want to not hire a whole team of people to support a certain set of activities, but you want to deploy agents, assistants for that purpose. But you need to configure them each in terms of roles and permissions. I can't take my assistant that has roles and permissions to see everything that I can see. I can't have that doing support tickets, because then you could just write into support and say, book 7 hours with Christopher next Tuesday, and it would be like done. And so service user, it was you and me in an elevator for 7 seconds, and you had to be able to answer the question on my behalf, Kyle. I would say, we're doing agent-based pricing. It's seat pricing until you need service users for virtual workforce.
What's been the response to that?
It's been really positive, way more positive than I would have thought.
I have to imagine people like it more than like a credit model, because they'd have no idea how to estimate how many freaking credits they need.
This is the question I had coming on this call, Kyle. What do you think of credit models?
I think credit models have been a useful bridge, but we're going to go in two directions. One, to me, is more value-based pricing, and the other is actually to like a bring your own API keys model. If products are essentially just a wrapper reselling ChatGPT or Anthropic or whatever the underlying models are, just bring your own API keys, right? Maybe even distribute through OpenAI or through Anthropic via a marketplace model, comp those reps on selling your product with them, and you essentially make money on the additional value above and beyond the LM access, but then the customers just pay for the AI usage as part of their kind of broader enterprise AI spend budget. And then on the value-based side, that's for companies that are often doing maybe service as a software or taking on entire work products. You're going to want to try to price it in a way that feels closer to the work being delivered by the product versus the underlying infrastructure or tokens or these credits things that no one really seems to know what they are or care about.
I think both of those are way better than credits.
I just can't imagine an enterprise that has 20 vendors that all have credit models and is asking them to estimate their credit usage for next year in advance. And they know they're going to go over with some vendors and then have, punitive overages and go under with other vendors and have wasted spend. And they know that it's just all reselling them Claude and OpenAI. And so it's kind of like, why go through all these budgeting hoops when we can just simplify the whole motion?
I wonder how realistic the ecosystem kind of approach would be if you are so thin, it's obvious to do what you're suggesting. Which, I mean, I used to, use Cursor that way. There are a number of apps where I used to just have my Anthropic key in them, and that's, kind of not the vibe anymore. Even Claude Code, they really incent you to get onto a max plan and wrap that up in the SKU, right? The flat SKUs, and then they can kind of recognize the revenue that way and kind of tell the story that way. Maybe 1 month it benefits customers, who's to say? But it's at least predictable. And you can get value when you're new to it. That's one of my biggest beefs with the credit thing is that you walk in and you can't really, it's like, come try this thing for free. It's like, not really. How much is this going to cost me to really evaluate even if this is the right thing for me? And then it also really encourages episodic behavior. And there are a couple of apps that probably come to mind when I say that in terms of their use cases where it's kind of like, I'm going to load up some credits, I'm going to do a thing, and then I'm going to walk away with the results of my thing. And then I'm going to try to not have this be an ongoing thing. That ends up kind of working on both sides-ish, but that's not really how you want to build the software. You want to build software that's delivering value all the time. The ecosystem thing is, to me, maybe dicey. Co-selling, boy, I don't know how often it really works out in terms of, the reps getting comp to sell somebody else's thing. And maybe it's just my experience in ecosystems, but you could get rug pulled pretty fast.
To me, the real analogy is AWS, and you'll essentially have an option of buying, a hosted version, and maybe you pay for the infrastructure there. Like PostHog recently rolled out their AI pricing. They're pretty much just passing through the underlying LM costs. If they can negotiate volume discounts, I think that they pocket it. But otherwise, they said they're taking a 20% margin, passing through the AI costs. They give you some amount free to try so that you can try out their AI products before you buy it. There's maybe a self-hosted and a vendor-hosted option, and you can kind of navigate accordingly. But that way, you're essentially charging for the value of your product, and then the hosting and kind of infrastructure is kind of a separate budget, separate part of the equation. And that's not the core store of revenue. I think right now, the thing I struggle with is that for a lot of AI companies, the vast majority of their revenue is essentially passing through underlying LLM costs. They're calling that all ARR, when in reality, there's an element of value that they create and an element of value that's essentially passed through from someone else. And I'd love to distinguish those two things.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think a lot of enterprises have these big commits that they've done. And so they have big blocks of credits from the frontier providers. And the CFOs are sitting there and they don't really know how to spend them, believe it or not. This is a real thing. Now, if a vendor comes in and says, oh, well, you can actually spend those through us. And there's an AWS-y thing about that there that I like too.
Next up, we have got a business blunder for you all. Kyle, take it away. Let's look spicy.
My business blunder this week, I was scrolling through Twitter and I found this clip of the meeting room setup at reInvent. Someone called it the B2B SaaS version of Severance. This is just probably my biggest nightmare. Watching this video, It's like my biggest nightmare playing out in real time, walking past these like empty fake rooms in the middle of a large conference venue, just very dystopian looking. And just the fact that there's like so many of them, like it's in the 400s.
There's no roof.
I can only, there's no roof, so it must be just crazy loud when meetings are happening. I appreciate people wanting to have private meetings inside of a large conference, but the introvert in me is just so overwhelmed by this.
It can be weirder though, because I used to go to the Morgan Stanley conference, the investment banking conference, and what they would do in all the banks do is they rent out a whole floor of hotel rooms, but they like either take the bed out or they flip it against the wall, so it's like kind of hidden, but it's weird because you just feel like you're in somebody's hotel room around this little table, and you just move hotel room to hotel room throughout the day.
I've been on the other side of those, CJ. And it's so creepy. You're just sitting there in a hotel room and these like people come in with their briefcases and they sit down and they open their laptops and they ask you like 3 or 4 specific questions, the same ones, and then they shuffle off and a new group comes in. It's totally creepy.
It's a weird dynamic.
Christopher, do you have a business blunder for us?
Well, we were talking about ecosystems, and you probably get the sense that I'm like a little PTSD about ecosystems. Anytime I have integrated with a certain Goliath platform that's out there, you know, the allure of distribution, the allure of surfing somebody else's wave. I had a social game early on in my career that paid my rent for a couple of years or something, and I got hooked on these platforms and these marketplaces and stuff, but ecosystems are violent places.
Wait, stay on that. You had a game, a social game? Was it like a Facebook game?
It was Facebook, but it was in Brazil, dude.
Is this Farmville, but for Brazil before Farmville?
Essentially, yes. So there was a period of time before Facebook took over Brazil, there was another social network called Orkut, and they launched a social games platform. And I was the first Portuguese language app in it at launch. And all it let you do was choose what soccer team you rooted for. That was it. I've never told the story on a podcast or anything. I've never talked about this. It was a drop down with like the 500 Brazilian soccer teams. And you chose it, and that was it.
How to make money?
Over time, I built it out into like a whole thing with virtual currency and, you know, scheduled appointment patterns, stole a bunch of the Zynga stuff. There were some Zynga guys in Boston. There was a big office here. And so some of the kind of like design patterns were floating around. And so it ended up being this big flash game thing. But it got 1 million installs on the dropdown. And it got stolen by Globo, which is the biggest, it's like the NBC of Brazil. It's like the biggest newspaper, everything. They lifted the source code and everything, which I could tell because they forgot to swap out some of the images. Then later it became clear that Orkut itself had been stolen by the engineer who wrote it. And there's a fascinating case about that where they demonstrated it was stolen by reproducing several bugs in source code from a previous project.
Next up, we have got something that I tried this week. Take it away.
All right, it's December. I'm having to do a lot of Christmas shopping for the family. For me, ends up meaning I go on Amazon a lot. And I started using Rufus, their AI chatbot. Have either of you guys used this yet? So it's like an integrated chatbot to help you find things on Amazon, kind of like a better version of search. Amazon made a big kind of spiel about saying how great Rufus was for Black Friday and that Amazon sessions that resulted in a purchase were up by like 100% because of Rufus. Like they just said conversion went through the roof because of this thing. So I was very curious to try it. I asked for recommendations for like, you know, presents to buy my nephew and niece. I also just tried to put in some parameters of things I was searching for and find smart suggestions from Rufus. Honestly, I found it to be kind of garbage in how it searched through Amazon. And I then found myself going to ChatGPT, asking for the same things and asking for purchase links to buy stuff on Amazon. It was something I tried this week, but I don't think I'm going to be trying again anytime soon.
I don't shop for anything, in person or online.
Yeah, Christopher, what about you?
I caved and finally tried Suno. Are you guys not hip to Suno?
CJ only listens to bands from 2021, emo, grunge, punk bands.
Well, these cats are absolutely ripping. Actually, there was a lot of backlash about this in the music community for various reasons that, may or may not matter. But it's an incredible tool for music creators, even though it is really intended to allow you to make music if you have no ability to create music whatsoever. They have a big office in Boston. They've hired a ton of Berkeley people. They have, they have a bunch of proprietary models and hardware, a recording studio in their office, and the musician community is maybe kind of coming around about it because it's such a powerful creative tool.
And you had a good experience? Are you going to make all your music through them going forward?
I don't know. There's something just tactile about fiddling with knobs or playing a guitar or something like that. That's just kind of for me.
I'm trying to convince my wife to let me get a drum set for Christmas and to take drum lessons. First, she said, I think they only teach kids at the place down the road, so it would be very creepy. And second of all, we live too close to neighbors and they'll hear you. And third of all, we have a newborn on the way. So it's a no-fly zone. But I just think she's being the fun police. What do you guys think?
We built a whole stage here. And the kit that we have here is a V-drum kit. You could play it with headphones on.
Just got to let the boys play,
That's right.
That might be your compromise, CJ. You have to invite me to your first performance because I will be very curious to see how that goes.
Deal. I'll get you the friends and family discount on the tickets.
All right, well, Christopher, thanks for joining us. The things that you mentioned, I think, are top of mind for a lot of people building an AI. And so hopefully people enjoy it.
I was very honored to be asked to come, and it's great to see you. It's great to meet you, CJ. Yeah, you know where to find us.
Mostly Growth is a Mostly Media production, executive produced by Ben Hillman. That's me. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of CJ, Kyle, and Ben. Just some guys who love talking growth. Mostly. If you like this podcast, hit subscribe, give us 5 stars, or hit like. The algorithm overlords thank you. Drink water, call your mom, and have a great day.